Hi there, and Happy New Year, everyone. It is the start of 2017. It felt like 2016 was never going to fucking end, but here we are. And it is time for me to bring in the new year with the best of the books that I read this past year. Now, don't worry, I learned my lesson from last year when I thought it would be a good idea to talk about every single book I read of the year, and it ended up being a 22-minute video. We're gonna chalk that up to learning curve. But this year, I'm gonna do a new thing where I set up different categories and I tell you which books won in each category. So it's kind of like an award show where my opinion's the only one that matters. So therefore, it's the best award show ever. So without further ado, I am bringing to you Emily's Books of 2016. Our first category is gonna be the most shallow category, prettiest cover. Now, we've all heard that adage, don't judge a book by its cover, and we all know it's bullshit. A good cover can draw you across the bookshop to want to see what that shiny book is about. A good cover can help entice the reader, can help depict the mood or the genre. A good cover goes a long way. So, in my opinion, out of all the books that I read this year, the book with the prettiest cover was that of Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Look at this freaking cover! It is got the gorgeous blues and yellows playing off each other. It's kind of mysterious, and with the title of Station 11, and then you sort of think like, hey, there's tents. What is this Station 11? Is this Station 11? I want to know. I also really liked the material inside of the book, so this is a great example of how the outside of the book can depict the mood and the feeling of the inside of the book and just overall come across as great. That's my review of the title, is clapping. Our next category is the book that made me think the most. I think that a sign of a really good book is when you think about it after you read it, like it sticks with you. I think some of the best either stories or well-written topics are the ones that they stick in your little noggin and it's like, wow, this was conveyed in such an interesting, eloquent way that I can't get it out of my head. And the book that I read this year that made me think the most was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. There are so many noteworthy quotes. There are so many interesting lessons and ideas that I pulled from this book. I read this book at a time in my life when I needed it, and it really spoke to me. Our next category is the book that made me laugh the most. Dying is easy, comedy is hard. Writing good comedy is a very hard thing to do, and sometimes writing in book form, something that makes the reader laugh out loud, is a lot more challenging than you think it is, but when it's done well, I deeply appreciate it, and you bet I'm gonna give it a shout out in my year wrap up. The book that I read this year that made me laugh the most was Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Borsch. This book just cracked me up. It is so funny, and it's, in my opinion, it's a type of universally funny because Borsch talks about things like her childhood, her depression, her dogs, and if you've had a childhood or depression or dogs, you get the jokes and it's very funny to you. And I read like the whole thing in the span of like 2 days, and I just was sitting in bed on like 2 rainy days in a row, just belly laughing at this book. So I highly recommend getting you some good belly laughs and reading Hyperbole and a Half. Our next category is the book that made me cry. I think just as it's a sign of a good writer that you can make someone openly belly laugh, if you can jerk a tear out of my eye while I'm trying to read your book, but even though I'm crying, I still want to know what happens, that is a sign that you have hooked me in. I am invested and I care and I want to know what happens, and even though I am sad, I need to know, and it's so bad. So the book that made me cry this year was Tell the Wolves I'm Home by Carol Burnett. This book, oh my god, it was very well written, very beautiful, and you know what, for the record, like, you find out in the blurb, this isn't a spoiler, it has to deal with AIDS. So you know it's gonna be like, someone's gonna die, and it's gonna be sad, but the way that it was handled in this book, the way that it showed how the death of an important loved one can affect somebody, it really just tugged at my cold heart, and this was the book that made a little solitary tear just fall down my eye. No, it was a very well written book. It did make me cry, and I recommend it. Up next, we have the book that made me go, what the fuck? Now, what I mean by a book that made me go, what the fuck, is a book that either scared me, shocked me, or made me go while I was reading it, because I love when books get me invested and I want to know what's gonna happen, or I really didn't see something coming, or just I love that kind of thing. If you hook me in, I'm gonna give your book a good review. And this year, the book that made me go what the fuck was Descender, Volume 1, 10 stars by Jeff Lemire. I really enjoyed this comic, and there were points in time where I'm just going, what the fuck? What's gonna happen? I want this little robot to survive. What's going on? And that is the sign of a very good comic, is when you're just flipping through the pages, reading as fast as you can because you want to know what happens. So that deserves a what the fuck award. My last category is my most important. That is the book out of all the books that I read this year that I would recommend that everybody reads. And if you can only read one book that I have read out of all my book reviews that I think that you should definitely read in 2017, that would be Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty. I am a huge Caitlin Doughty fan. Full disclosure, I love her YouTube channel, Ask a Mortician. I'm dying to go to one of her death salons, but I don't know the next time they're going to be doing one in the East Coast area that I can get to. But I'm a huge Caitlin Doughty fan, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I thought that it was funny, I thought that it was thoughtful, and I think that everyone should read it because the topic of death positivity and death acceptance it's a somber one, but it's also very important. In occasions in this book, I was laughing, I was crying, it's moving, and everyone, if you only take one suggestion from all the books that I read this year, please read Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. So that was my little award show for the books that I read in 2016. I hope for another great year of reading. I think that just overall this year, I didn't really read anything that I regret reading. I didn't read like a real stinker. I'm excited, yay! And I hope that that goes into 2017. I don't like reading books that I don't like. Please feel free to comment below with book recommendations or the books that you read this year. Put them in the categories and see what comes up. I'm excited. I want to know books that will make me laugh and cry and say, what the fuck? I'm really excited. I'd just like to take this little second at the end of my video to say that thank you. Thank you so much for the support you've given me, and thank you I am just completely honored for my humble little subscriber base. I love you guys. It's awesome. And thank you. I just can't impart my thanks enough. So as always, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if that's your thing, and please go out there, read more books, and tell me what you've read.